Hi there, this is Felicia Holmes, your host of Own It for Good, the podcast where we talk about all things personal responsibility and owning it. And not just owning it for ourselves, but owning it for good in a resolved way where we become the change that we want to see in the world. So it benefits us, it's for our good, it's for the good of those that we're in relationship with, in our community, and ultimately the world. Can you imagine what a world it would be if we all stood up, woke up, and owned it for good? So that is sort of the mission that I'm on, and I am on that journey myself. I am very much still a work in progress, but I am on fire and passionate about it. Today we are going to talk about the final letter in the words own it, it's an acronym. And if you've been following along, great. If not, you can go back and listen. You can stop this now and go back a few, or I'll just give you the brief outline right now, or I'll just list what it stands for, and then you can go back and listen at your leisure or not. So O stands for outcome. W is for why. Why do you want this outcome? And it needs to be a why that makes you cry. And N is for constantly asking yourself the question, now what? Now what are you going to do about it? And this is something we might have to ask ourselves even 10 times a day during this process on the journey. And it's an ever evolving, you've just got to check in with yourself constantly. Now what? Now what? What are you willing to do about it? And willing is a key word. So anyway, we unpack that in another episode. Then last one, we talked about the I, which stands for integrity. Living from that integrated place of being whole, being authentic and free, like my t-shirt, authentic freedom. For those of you that are not seeing me, you can go to YouTube and see it, but I have a t-shirt on that actually says authentic freedom on it. And maybe at some point, if I can figure out all the technical stuff, I can figure out a link to tell you how you can buy your own. I have a bunch of them now. So T is for taking action. And I can think of, in the last couple of years, a couple of books that stand out to me in particular that you may want to jot down, get out a pencil and paper, or go back. Maybe I'll try to put it in the show notes of a couple of books that had a big impact on me, but they were very easy to read and very inspirational and told in almost like a parable or story format and giving some guiding principles for living. One is The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. And his principles, he actually calls decisions, 7 decisions. It's a really interesting book. I actually happened to pick this up at a real estate conference that I was attending, and there was a little book swap, and this was one that I just picked up. I think God knew what he was doing at that one, because that was a pivotal moment when I picked up this book and read. And I even, so much that I have them written in tiny form, and I keep this with me on like a little index size card. The other is Og Mandino's book, The Greatest Salesman, which I am a huge fan of. Brian Buffini. He is a real estate coach, but he's also just a great coach in general, and he has a great podcast. But he's always talking about Og Mandino, and I hadn't, actually read him until fairly recently. So I guess I was just picking up a lot of his tips by osmosis through that podcast, but I've learned a lot from him. Anyway, the reason I mentioned both of those authors is because on their sort of list of principles, and in the 7 decisions, it's decision number 3, it is, I am a person of action. I seize the moment and I choose now. And that's from The Traveler's Gift, Andy Andrews. And Og Mandino, his principles come in the form of 10 scrolls. And scroll number 9 was, I will act now. So that's sort of my jumping off point. And instead of talking about just how to take action, we will talk a little bit about that. And the definitions, some of the definitions are to act in order to get a particular result, to do something in an official capacity, to act positively and decisively to resolve a problem, lasting change, making a difference in the world for all people who are affected. So instead of telling you how to take action, I think we all know intrinsically what that means. But what might be a little bit more helpful to do is I'm going to take the approach of what is getting in your way. Why aren't you taking action? For heaven's sake, this was the problem. This is the spin cycle that I was in for years. It was like, or maybe I would stop. Well, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. So, and this is actually the approach from another author that I really like. I'm an avid reader, you guys can tell. But Brene Brown, in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, and when she talks about the 10 guideposts, I think that's how she refers to them, of wholehearted living, she actually kind of approaches her thesis is more about, let's talk about what gets in our way. Why aren't we kind of all know what to do. We just don't always know why we're not doing it. So that's what I thought, the approach that I would take today. So before we get into, and I have a list of 10 things that I believe get in the way. I know they certainly got in my way, but I'm going to give a little example and see if you can catch this. It's maybe a little question for you. If there are 4 birds sitting on a wire, or there are 4 birds sitting on a wire, 3 decide to fly away, how many are left? Did you answer 1 to that question? I mean, that seems pretty obvious, right? Well, I'm going to tell you, we're all wrong. There are 4 birds still left on that wire, because there's a difference between deciding and doing. And I think a lot of us get caught in the deciding cycle, thinking that we are doing. And I know I did. I was totally guilty of this. Anyway, let's move on to my list, because I'm going to get ahead of myself. 10 things that get in the way of us taking action. Number 1, we are waiting for the right time, the perfect time, the right circumstances. We need the conditions to be right. Oh, I can't do it now because there's a wedding coming up, or the kids' summer break. We're on summer break right now. I know you all, right now, as I'm recording this, we are in the middle of a summer break. I know it might not be for you when you're listening to it. So there's a ton of things, excuses that we have, just waiting for it to be the right, and maybe it's even waiting for the right people in your life to support you in the right way. So there's a lot of things that we do in this, like waiting in this limbo area where, that deciding phase. Number 2, we might be waiting for the right external motivation. This is sort of that, again, this can be that same spin cycle of, consuming podcasts, consuming books, taking advice from friends, asking friends. This is thinking that this is action. This is that bird that he's deciding to fly off the wire, but that doesn't equate to actually flying off of the wire. So the number 3 is analysis paralysis. This is a big one for me personally. I can overthink anything. I mean, I'm a researcher by nature. I like to know all the facts. I think it's fun to research. I am so known for it. I have had friends come to me and coworkers over the years, 4 years, when they need something researched or want to know more about a topic, they come to Felicia. I remember, I'll tell a little story on myself. I can remember when I was a young mom and even a pregnant mom, and we were all about the same age working for a big company in the corporate world. And a few of us seem to have gotten pregnant right around the same time. I mean, it's not a surprise. We were similar age and working together, those things just kind of happen. And I knew exactly the right baby bag to buy. I knew which type of feature every baby bag offered. I knew every stroller detail, every car seat detail. And all the other moms, they came to me to, find out these things. So instead of just going and buying a bag, and this happens constantly in my life. Now that I can really see it for what it is, I can kind of check myself. But there's still times when my husband or people that know me well, they've got to come kind of knock on this hard head and go, what are you doing? And there can be a lot of root causes for that. And maybe I can talk about that in another episode, because I've done a lot of thinking about why that happens with me. I know that I'm naturally wired to do that, but there's also, I think, some other factors that play in. And it's also, I'm going to jump ahead of myself again. I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to follow my list. I'm taking action and following my list. So anyway, we can get lost in the weeds, analysis paralysis, overthink. I think we've all probably experienced that. Number 4, we pause or hesitate. We're ready to do it, and then, we freeze and and the person I like to refer to with this concept is Mel Robbins. She is a wonderful motivational speaker, life coach person out there. Google her name and you'll find her. She wrote a great book called The 5-Second Rule. And she talks, she has a whole book just about this topic and why this gets in the way and why our brain does this and what we can do about it. And she developed a 5-second rule. She kind of stumbled on it because she found herself in some of these traps and why can't I just act? And she was allowing that pregnant pause to just get bigger and bigger, and then it led to non-action or hitting. She used the reference of hitting the snooze bar quite a bit in oversleeping. She would set her intention the night before to get up, get motivated, go for the run, all the things, and then found herself not doing that. And she stumbled across a technique called the 5-second rule, and she would count down like a launch, like a rocket launch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And she would do it audibly, and count backwards. And somehow the science that she's done has determined, and research that she's done, it actually activates different parts of your brain and helps you get into movement. If you just set that intention and just do it anyway. So if you find yourself having this trouble, maybe look up Mel Robbins and the 5-second rule and give that a try. She's got a lot of testimonies and success out there. Another tip I have, just a little coaching hack, if let's say you're wanting to start on the diet and you're not quite ready yet, maybe you've put the plan together and you've set a date to start, and But another thing that you can do to do something, I would say just do something, is to do a simple decluttering project. Clean out, and this can be whatever it is you're working on. Go clean the junk drawer in the kitchen, the pantry, or if you have a drawer in your bedroom, something. If you do a small decluttering project, that can actually feel really good. It helps also free up some mental clutter, and that even doing something, even if it's unrelated to the action that you actually want to take, you have taken an action, and it will empower you to maybe take the first action on the other thing that you are letting, not happen, and staying in the deciding mode. So that would be another, just a little trick that you might want to try, and to keep that in your brain, even for maybe kids or loved ones. That's a great, just little trick to keep in your pocket. Number 5, starting. Okay, you've started, and then you stop, and then you start, and you stop. This is sort of the willpower effect when we're doing it, and we might be relying on the external motivation, and then we hit that maybe a roadblock of maybe it's too hard or whatever, and we slow down. Consistency trumps everything. This has been a really important one for me to learn personally. I was the quintessential starter stopper, and then all that does is breed more frustration. You start to feel defeated at some point. You start to have a lot of guilt and shame and other things happening internally. This is a perfectionistic approach. If you've got a lot of perfectionistic tendencies, and it's interesting because I did not actually think of myself that way, but when I look back with all that I've learned and I know now, I can see that I kind of was. But I didn't. So you might not necessarily consider yourself a perfectionist, but if this tactic right here or roadblock is showing up in your life, you might want to rethink that. You might have some all or nothing, black and white thinking. If it's not going perfectly, then I'm going to stop. Or maybe you're a people pleaser. That's another thing that can kind of pop up, where we let other people's priorities interrupt ours, and then we find ourselves derailed and stopping. And then that is a really exhausting cycle to be stuck in. So it's better to be consistent, even if it's going at a very slow pace, but consistency trumps everything. There's the reason, the fable, the tortoise and the hare. Yeah, we all know that one, and we all know the truth of it. But it's hard, especially here those of you that are, living in America with me. If you're not, if you're in a Western society, this is definitely something culturally that we really deal with. But I would imagine a lot of cultures deal with this. It's this go hard or go home, suck it up, buttercup type thing. And that mentality can also be really exhausting, and that's part of this whole stop, start. Number 6, expectations. We forget to set the proper expectations, or even make that a part of our process of whatever it is that we're attempting to do, whatever outcome. Are we being realistic? Remember the SMART acronym. Is it specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound? And to understand a little bit of brain science and do a little bit of work, and listen to me and talk about habit change, there is some real, our brain and our egos do not like change. Change is hard. And our identities and our belief systems are very tied to the way that we currently exist. And change, our lower brain, or some might call it a critter brain, lizard brain, you hear a lot of terms out there, it's all the same thing. But it is very protective of us, and it sees change as very threatening even good changes. So setting expectations, knowing, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable. My brain's probably going to resist and fight against me at times. I'm going to feel things like boredom. My brain will try to self-sabotage me, look for excuses. Complacency could set in. There are going to be days when I just don't feel like it. I'm going to have low motivation. This is why we talk about the why first, the why that makes you cry, and also the why that keeps you going even on these days when you don't feel like it. But even having the proper expectations, then even when we know that change is uncomfortable, hard, bored, all of these things, if we expect it, then it's actually not so bad. If we don't expect it and we have a skewed view of what the real process of change is going to take, that's when all of these things actually are way worse, because then your expectations aren't aligned. Number 7, anxiety. Yes, I'm going to refer back to Brene Brown on this one. She did her first podcast. Y'all have to go listen to it. It was really good. She calls it the FFTs. And if you've got kids in the car, then cover their ears real quick. But FFT stands for fucking first time. Like, there's just no getting around doing something for the first time. And that's the whole process of getting started, taking action. Sometimes we have to, and this kind of combines a lot of these different aspects. There might be anxiety involved. Maybe you have unrealistic, well, it is anxiety. That's what I just said. But you might have unrealistic expectations that you shouldn't be anxious, or that you should be better than you are at this stage. All of these things, but do it anyway. And this is also, Mel Robbins talks a lot about this with her 5-second rule. This is how she gets over the anxiety. Another is a trick to also learn that in your body, fear and anxiety feel the same as excitement. So you can also kind of trick your brain and retrain it just by using different language. Instead of telling yourself that you're anxious, tell yourself that you're excited. And do it anyway, because then we start getting evidence that we can do it. It's not so bad. And we build confidence. And just think about, going to school the first day, or if you're a parent and you have kids and walking them through the first day, like, they're going to be okay. I just went through this last year with sending my youngest, or my oldest, off to college. There was a lot of anxiety there, all the new kids, living away from home for the first time. Like, it was all normal. And I knew that. I had been through it before. I had experience. He did not. And it was, and just to reassure him, it's perfectly natural. But then once he got on the other side of that, I could say, and he was starting to have good feelings and it wasn't so bad. It's actually good to revisit that and retell that to yourself. Make sure that you're really anchoring in, oh yes, this is actually great. It's exciting. Usually the anxiety and the buildup before the thing happens is way worse than when it actually did. And you get through it and then you're like, I can't believe I was so worried. I can't believe I was so anxious or so afraid. You've felt that way before. I know you have. And you've watched it with other people too. So that's a very real part. Again, if we even go back to the expectations, our brain is afraid of new things. It likes to be comfortable because it knows it's predictable. It knows the outcome, even if it's not a great outcome. This is why so many people stay stuck and they don't do a lot with their lives, because it's their comfort zone, or they're even doing it for the comfort of other people. This is what our brains are built for. So if we understand that and know that, though, then we can work with our brain versus, it's like swimming upstream when we don't know these things. Number 8, regret, guilt, or maybe a feeling of like, oh, I'm too old, it's too late, why even bother? Just this attitude of, or I've messed up so bad, this is too big to fix, I can't do this. People that maybe have gained quite a bit of weight, whatever it is, maybe a relationship is on the brink and it just seems too bad to be able to salvage or fix. In the Christian faith, a lot of people do not, they kind of want to believe in Jesus or want to believe that God loves them, but they think that it's all on them. They've messed up too bad. So there's a lot of things like in that realm of negative thinking actually that can keep us stuck. A year from now, you will wish you had started today. And another great question to ask yourself if you find yourself in this thought loop is, and if you want something, and if you're procrastinating or thinking that it just can't happen, or, oh, I just don't have the energy for that, I'll deal with it later and eat the chocolate cake anyway, or have the bottle of wine, whatever. If not now, then when? Even going back to, item 1 on the list, waiting for the right time. Like, there's never going to be a right time to make a big change. I know. I kept waiting. I wasted probably a good 5 years in that space of all of these things. So I have done them all. Oh, yes. Number 9. This is where I started to get ahead of myself at the beginning of the podcast. Distractions. Oh, man. And that's where I can really use even research, the consuming of information, the process of deciding, like all of these to me are a big distraction. I can convince myself that I'm acting by learning more about the thing or spending more time overthinking. But literally, like I'm talking on my iPhone right now, so I can't show it to you, but our devices are a huge time suck. I think even while I have been recording this, I forgot to put my phone on silent mode, so I was having notifications popping up that, were distracting. It is just a part of our world now, and it is starting to change the human brain chemistry. I think I heard a podcast, or I was listening to a book by Jim Quick of Quick Learning, and his new book, Limitless. And he was quoting a statistic in there that our attention span is less than a goldfish now. Nice. Goldfish have better attention spans than humans do now with our digital devices. So that is a real thing. So put your phones away, put your devices away, like when you have a calendar, time block things, like actually schedule things out so that you can stay focused. This is a big one for me. I am a type 9 on the Enneagram, and I'm going to be talking a lot about the Enneagram because to me it's just been personally it's been such a huge transformation tool, and it helps me know what my blind spots are, and then I can know that I can, maneuver around them or get over them, get over myself and do the things that I really do want to do. But I know that maybe the way that I'm naturally wired or my imbalances as a 9 that keep me, and one of them is distractions. I think that I have maybe a form of ADHD, inattentive ADHD. I haven't been diagnosed, I don't know, but it does seem like a very 9-ish thing that we are very busy and very productive, but oftentimes we're not doing the thing that we're supposed to be doing. Like me doing this podcast, I always seem to wait till the later part of the day, but I have been very consistent. So I am doing this. I am taking action. I am doing all of my own owning it, and applying it to myself. And I'm overcoming all of these obstacles, all these things that get in the way. I know, and I'm saying a lot, and that's okay. I'm new at this. I'm getting better each time. And I know that I have a lot of good things to say. I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to resonate with me and the way I say it. And God has put this on my heart and in my consciousness and passion to want to help others, even if it means it's imperfect and I'm not waiting for the right time. And the final thing, the tyranny of how. Tony Robbins talks about that a lot. The tyranny of how. That's where, again, we can really get lost and we think way too big and, oh my gosh, if I'm going to do a podcast, it has to be like top rated. And if I'm going to do something, it's got to go big. Well, everybody has to start somewhere. And so let's just do it. We jump from A to Z, but there's a lot of letters in between the letters A and Z in the alphabet. And even with the best laid plans, let's say we spend all the time researching it and, figuring out exactly, I've got to have the website done and this done, and I've got to have my courses done, and I've got to have had so many clients through my coaching program first, and this many testimonials, and I'm also a realtor by trade, realtor, and we can get lost in the same thing. They call it shiny object syndrome too, where we're like, oh yeah, if I just have that right database or that right system, and and then we get overwhelmed with all of the things and we don't do anything. And then so a lot of these are interrelated, but they can be very overwhelming. If I want to do a podcast and I think it's got to be like top rated within 6 months, and I've also got to write a book, and I've got to have 100 coaching clients and blah blah blah, like if I let that, and then in order to do that, I've got to have just the right amount of Facebook and social media posting, and I've got to have this website and click funnels and it's a little overwhelming. Being an entrepreneur, if anybody has that on their radar, it can, and they know what I'm talking about, it's very overwhelming. You've got to wear all the hats and you think you've got to have everything figured out. And of course, everybody out there, you're thinking you've got to be Tony Robbins or Mel Robbins or, one of these people. But they all had to start somewhere, right? And they all had to get there. It's a process. We look at people that have reached the mountaintop and we didn't realize how much work and blood, sweat, and tears and all of that went into it. And they didn't know all of the how. They just did it. And the thing is that the steps, the process, it all unfolds if you trust the process. And that's where I want to end. So I'm going to recap real quick, just because I know I went through a lot there. Number one, these are the things that we let get in our way. We're waiting for the right time and for conditions to be perfect and everybody to be on board with the change. If you're a people pleaser like me, recovering. Waiting for the right external motivation, the fairy just to land on you. And that's, going to do that. Analysis paralysis was number 3. 4, pausing, hesitating, and then you don't. 5, maybe you do start, but then you stop and start and stop. So consistency is not your friend there, and it needs to be your friend, even if that means that you slow down. So maybe you're going too hard, too fast, willpower, I got to do it all right now, versus, okay, let's do one thing at a time, get it right, get that down consistently, then to the next thing. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. 6, expectations. Expect your brain to rebel against you, for you to get bored, for you to be uncomfortable. Make friends with your brain, respect your brain, and know, and then have the appropriate expectations. So that way, when these things do happen, it's not going to be as bad. like truly. And remember your why. Number 7, anxiety. Doing something for the first time is just going to be that, the FFTs. Do it anyway. Build your confidence and build that evidence bank. Number 8, regret, guilt, too late thinking, all the negative thoughts. And you let that get in the way. Instead, flip that script. If not now, when? And a year from now, you're going to wish you had started today. So the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the next best time, the next best, got tongue-tied. The next best time is today. Number 9, distractions. 10, the tyranny of how, thinking you have to have it all figured out. So I'm going to end with this note, is trusting the process. I love that phrase. And there is a process, but a process can only happen when you start. And deciding is a part of that process. I mean, you do have to decide, but don't get stuck in that thinking that that's action. Do the thing, fly off the wire. Birds were made to fly and soar and be free. Trust the process. You will figure it out as you go. And you will fail at times, or I don't even like to look at it as failure. It's all feedback. You're going to get feedback sometime. And shifting your overall attitude from one of curiosity and learning and kicking judgment to the core, to the curb and perfectionism. The path, it unfolds and it reveals itself as you go. And I will also suggest, no matter what your faith system is, that you include prayer, include God, include, that power that is greater than you on this process, and partner with that energy and that guidance, and good things will happen. One of my friends who is a baseball mom, and her husband is their little league coach. And one of the sayings that she grabbed onto from that experience is, put the ball in play and good things will happen. So on that note, I'm going to ask you to think about and maybe even comment below this video, or if you're in the podcast world, if you'll leave feedback and tell me. And you can find me on Facebook, Felicia Holmes Transformation Coach. I'm still learning how to get all of that out there, but you can't find me if you look out there. But I would love to know what your takeaways from this are, and are you ready to put the ball in play? Tell me what it is and share with me, and so we can all learn from each other. This is a laboratory of life. It's an adventure, and we all get better by sharing with each other. Iron sharpens iron. Until next time, I'm out.